Before we get started, let me tell you, we've terrestrialized this week's podcast into a shorter version. All right, so we're trying something a little different. We're going to keep it about 30 to 45 minutes and see if y'all like that better. We can talk about this game for literally hours. Joseph calls me at like 3 in the morning sometimes, and I just let it play. I just let the call roll. It's just going on and on about these crazy leaks and theories. But today we're trying a little shorter. Let us know if you like it. If you're like, no, go back to the longer episode format. Let us know in the comments or on Twitter or something like that. Joseph, welcome. You're here.
Hello. Yes, I am here.
We have well. Let's tell the people that you have been working on something else. Pokemon, yes, we got some very good DLC discussion to have today. But tell us about what's been going on over on Webtoons.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I am a content creator and a illustrator outside of my Pokemon professor job. So basically Webtoon, which is a very big comic company, digital comic company, hosted a contest called the Call to Action Contest, and I really wanted to enter it. So I tried my hand at it. I created a story. It's an awesome little tournament fight with a pretty interesting story, if I had to say so myself.
It's just
Thank you.
It's
yes.
just great.
Zach has actually been a part of it. So I mean, the whole thing is really cool. It's out right now, so if you want to give it a read, definitely do that. Let me know what you guys think. And yeah, I mean, if it wins, it becomes featured and it gets an animation, so it's very, very cool. So if you guys could help us get there, that would be amazing. And yeah, there goes that. That's
click that link, give it a read. It's really, really good. The conceit of the storyline is really interesting, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So hopefully we get more of that soon. We did get much more Pokemon. We don't really need to talk about the trailer. We've reacted to that. A couple quick hits before we get into the DLC, though. One, this whole eyebrow thing. Show the eyebrows, the eyes and the eyebrows. What's going on here?
I mean, yeah, somebody pointed out, I guess once we got the official art of the new rival, I forget his name in particular, so forgive me, but someone noticed a few similarities to our wonderful professors. So I guess the conversation to be had here is there any relation? We do know that for this rival in particular, he will accompany us on one of the 3 storylines, which does look like it's going to be a little bit of a investigation type thing where we're going around checking out crystal sites or something of the professoring type. So I mean, right. It could very much be that he has the same interest in science, Pokemon science, whatever that may be. So I guess, again, it's just interesting seeing that there are so many design crossovers from our professors. I don't know that it actually means anything, but it is kind of shocking just how much they have in common.
This is Arvin, and he can terrestrialize into either Sada or Turo, depending on what version of the game you have. Well, it does say Arvin is not good at Pokemon battles, so I absolutely think that it is going to be more of that regional mystery storyline. Riddler Koo tweeted out this thing that 3 of your friends are tied, or 3 of your rivals are tied to the 3 storylines. That's Arvin, Nimona, and Penny, kind of separated, and we believe Arvin is sort of the paradox type storyline. Nimona is going to be the gym leader storyline, and then Penny is the, oh gosh, I have Eevee on my back, but I'm actually evil storyline. So that's what we got going on there. There was just a new leak this morning about Paradox, Tentacool, and Tentacruel. They're apparently going to be mushrooms, which I'm all about. A lot of details on the map as well. This map is really well drawn. If you haven't had a chance to zoom in on the map, zoom in on the map, because someone painstakingly put all the little buildings, everything on here. This is like put it up in your bedroom poster worthy.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think this has to be one of the best, I guess, launch versions of the map. Because, we've had people go in and kind of make better versions of the in-game Pokemon maps. But this already out the gate kind of shows essentially everything. I mean, it's so in-depth that someone actually took, Spain and kind of figured out where these places are in the real world.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
It's crazy. And we've seen recently with Pokemon that they have been a little bit more true to the shapes of the region and the places and the climates for what they're basing it off of. And I don't know. I think this has to be one of the coolest looking maps. And you can really tell it's open world from it. it's the first map where you're like, there are no routes. I mean, of course there are, but they're not like the routes that we know, where they're just some, dirt paths with grass. Like, this is open. You can really see that you could go anywhere, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, it also reveals kind of the big crux of today's video, which is, why are the clouds darker and deeper on one side of the map? So basically, we know via leaks that there's going to be DLC. We know that there's some sort of extensive DLC. Everybody has kind of not even really hinted, just said there's DLC. And today even we got a new kind of thing that apparently there was a Paradox Suicune and a Paradox Virizion that are now moved to the DLC. But as this is Spain, as it does correlate so beautifully in the map, there is the idea that Kalos could be up there in the northeastern corner. And we kind of want to talk about the implications that has, what it does to the game, and one, we basically be getting 2 regions, but 2, if that is to be, it does bump this game up to probably an $80 or $90 game, and kind of the implications there, because, like, be honest, what Pokemon fan is not going to get, hey, Kalos' open world DLC? So, begin.
Yeah, number one, it's, Zach and I talked about this a little bit beforehand, but there has always been this kind of talk going on in the quote unquote leaking community for Pokemon that there is a chance that Kalos was going to be in Sword and Shield, or at least that some work in Kalos has been done. Because again, it's really the outlier in terms of Pokemon in general, considering the fact that it's the only region that we've never gone back to in any way. So usually Pokemon will use their second versions of their games to kind of make a director's cut, fit certain things, add a lot of content. X and Y, as it came out. It was the first 3D game. I think it got a lot of hate because it was when it started getting a little bit easy, and they never quite had a chance to, I guess, make it shine. And Kalos, because of that, has always kind of felt to the wayside. Like, you don't really have a lot of people who it's their favorite region, which is sad because it was a beautiful region. It offered a lot of like interesting things, a lot of interesting Pokemon. But actually, one of the Pokemon it just hit me now, it could kind of lead to this DLC thing being real, and that's Go-Goat, which is a Pokemon that was created for X and Y. It's a little leaf goat guy. Very cool design. You're able to ride on it. It never had another game. It was never in another game outside of X and Y. And now, this game. We have seen it in Scarlet and Violet. It's pretty much, it was already confirmed from the leaks that it was in it. So, of course, it being attached to where Kalos would be, if we're comparing the real world to the Pokemon world, it would make sense that this would roam in this area. So I think that, if anything, gives it a little bit more credence. But the major problem here is, can they and would they, right? Can they remake Kalos from the ground up while also providing the same type of gameplay that we are now being introduced to with Scarlet and Violet? And if they can, is it worth the return on investment? Is it worth creating a brand new, fully 3D, fully open world Kalos, if even in the remake, they're probably not going to use it? You know what I mean? Because for the remake, they're probably going to try to be a little bit more faithful. I can't imagine they're going to step out of their comfort zone with those. So it's like they would, I guess, inevitably end up making Kalos twice or 3 times, really, if they put it in this game and then do the remake. So that's a huge, huge reason to not get too excited. But the alternative is, maybe for the remake, they will make it open world. Maybe Diamond and Pearl will be the last true remake, and with like the Black and White remake that we will inevitably get in a couple of years, maybe that will be a little bit more open world. They'll try things differently. So if that's the case, I guess remaking Kalos now would kind of make their job in the future easier, because they're like, we can just use what we made for Scarlet and Violet. But again, it's such a toss up. There's so much reason to believe that it would be in, but realistically, it's just so hard to imagine.
What's the other justification for the clouds then? If we look at the map, why else? Unless it's some post-game content. But you've mentioned, to me that, okay, we have France, we have the UK, we have Spain, and they kind of all are drawing our attention to this in between area, and
Yeah.
why else? I mean, I guess it could be post game. We have ideas on the map of, oh, this seems to be potentially the Elite Four, right below the little evil hurricane doom pit in the center. There's like a little road that could be like your Elite Four victory road type thing. Can you think of any other purpose? Could it just be, oh, hey, the Isle of Armor equivalent for SV is up in this corner? Is there does that seem like a possibility to you?
It could be. It could very much be that, because I know that again, we have people connecting the maps already. Because if for those of you who don't know, Pokemon regions aren't just based off of like real life areas. They are quite literally real life areas just turned into Pokemon areas. So, the first couple were all Japan, different islands in Japan, and that's Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn. I mean, they've even turned like Black and White is New York. Like they used New York as a so it's not all like countries or
Sure.
They don't really have a rhyme or reason for it. However, with the past 3, they do connect exactly the way our real world maps connect, and I think that alone kind of shows this kind of like unity between these regions. So seeing the clouds there to me does say like we have to be leaving this region and going to the outskirts at least a little bit. Now there is a little bit of space connecting between Spain and France, so it can be that they can just take that little isolated bit of space and be like, here's a small post game that you can do. But it would be very misguided to, I guess, if you're gonna let us leave Paldea, if you're gonna let us leave the region, make us leave for a good reason. Don't let it be a small, like with Sword and Shield and the Isle of Armor, it made sense to have an off-island kind of DLC because there was nothing that they can do inland. Like they've pretty much exhausted everything that they had, right?
Right.
For this, it's like there is no ocean, so why wouldn't we be able to just go into Kalos? Like, what's going to stop us from doing that, right? So I think like that's not just created to stop us. Like it made sense with Galar not to be able to go to Kalos because it was water, right? So fine, like we've never been able to surf outside of a region. I can get with that logic. But with Scarlet and Violet, it literally connects through land to Kalos. So to me, it's just for them to cut it off, they would have to cut it off completely. They can't leave that bit of land and let us kind of explore and then stop us right before Lumio City in the distance. Like that would be upsetting. They've done that before in the Hoenn remakes. They show the Battle Frontier being built and everyone thought it was going to be DLC because it was like in development now, and they never did anything with that. So I do think Game Freak is mean enough to put something so tantalizing just right outside our reach, but I'm hoping that that's not the case. Otherwise, I don't know what the point of those clouds are, really.
It literally could just be a story bit, though. What if someone from, that region comes over and you meet them and it's like, ta-da! Yeah. I mean, I guess devil's advocate wise, like an open world in this way does allow for many more opportunities for DLC to exist right in this world. Like I know in Sword and Shield we had 2 sort of expansions that were, unique, but here you could use the already existing space to, slightly change it, twist it, or just introduce a new storyline that kind of goes about the land in different order. It's very plausible that they just use what they have. But do you foresee this DLC? I mean, if it's Kalos, then to me that's 1 pack. That's not 2. So do you think that they're going to change it up and not go with sort of the multi-released structure that they did for Sword and Shield?
That's a good question. I do think Game Freak is as much as they try to change things up, they do usually fall into like habits. They are very creatures of habits when it comes to development and stuff. So a part of me imagines that they are going to do the 2-wave thing again. Number 1, it keeps the game alive longer. Number 2, it gives them more time for development. So anything that they have to do, they can. I'd imagine if they're doing a whole region as DLC, they would probably break that up as much as like I almost think that would be the way to do it if they're going to do it, because if they're doing a whole region of DLC, I don't think there should be 2 packs. I think that should speak for, if it's true to its, like if it's truly all of Kalos, you can do all 8 gym badges and do the Elite Four. If you could complete that whole thing, I don't think there's need for another DLC. I actually genuinely wouldn't want another DLC right away, just because I want to know that region is going to be fully realized, not like just kind of thrown together. So if the promise of a full second region, essentially being a second game, was delivered, then we don't need another DLC. However, if they are going to segment it, I would hope that they segment parts of Kalos, maybe allow you to go in, do the first 4 gyms, for whatever reason, have there be a story roadblock, and then fine, do your second DLC if they have to do it. It's still kind of ridiculous of a sell, but I do think the promise of eventually the full region, it's too big of a promise to not be like, yeah, I'll take it. Like, I don't want to push my luck and be like, hey, first DLC is Kalos, second DLC we go back to Galar, which they could technically do, but I don't know. That to me seems a bit much. The only thing I'm very concerned about is the movement of the character. If we are to believe that we go back to Kalos, even if they make it fully 3D, which again is a massive undertaking for anybody who doesn't understand, that is, they would have to, it's not just going back to X and Y and digging up those source files and planning that. They're going to have to reimagine stylistically. They're going to have to reimagine what Pokemon are there. It's going to be a
spatially. I feel like being open world, you'd have to stretch and drag and skew things. For sure. You
cannot have those small towns now. Even with your character model alone, the sizes aren't even correct. Like, remember, they were still doing the chibi style for the overworld back then. So it's like everything changes. Everything does. So it essentially is a new game altogether. With that being said, though, what happens with your Koraidon or Miraidon? Like, what? There's no way you're riding those bad boys into Kalos and they're just working with everything. You know, like I do think, and actually that brings up a good question. I do wonder what the use of them inside of towns would be, because I don't think they're just going to have you riding on those things in town.
Yeah,
climbing up things,
storefronts and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. I feel like they might do the
Godzilla, King Kong.
Exactly, unless that's one of the storylines that we just don't know. I do think that like maybe they're gonna do the whole your professor tells you not to take them out right now. You know, like so. I that could be. That probably is what they do. So, but then for all of Kalos, you're basically not going to have the ability to ride on your, legendary, which is kind of a massive loss there. And you would have to have another means of transportation. In Kalos, you had your roller skates. So like they'd have to then give you roller skates to basically count as the bike for the region. And then that's a whole other thing they have to code in. And to animate, because like it's so much work. It's an unbelievable amount of work. So I don't know if it is DLC, it has to be only one, and it has to be a while before it comes out.
And I've expressed this before, like my kind of wish for DLC in this game would be that it's an ever evolving world that keeps this constantly fun. Now that's a dramatically different plan than dropping a whole region, right? This is, I'm saying like, every week there's a new quest, or, and every month there's a new Pokemon. And I think that would fit really well in with this world. I don't know that fits in really well with Game Freak or Nintendo. If we look at Animal Crossing, that game was ripe to be a live service title, and they absolutely did not do it that way. You might think that they did with the regular updates, but no, they really didn't. That was just kind of building the game together, and then they were like, we're done. I feel like this is the best opportunity to have that. You have, clearly we're going to have all these different locations, all these waypoints, all of these little outdoor Pokemon centers. You could do so much with that with multiplayer. It's already in there. But then that completely, like, I don't think they can do both. I don't know that they can do Kalos and we're going to do regular updates. So to me, it is still a bit up in the air. The clouds lead me to believe, okay, they are going to do a big chunk of DLC. I think there's also the option of like, what if it's just not, and you alluded to this, not all of Kalos? What if it's just a chunk? Like, you can just go to a chunk and maybe it's not even gym related. Maybe it's just, we're this new Paradox Pokemon based on something from the maybe there's something like that, or just some reason that we have to go into a little section of it. But I guess then the question becomes, and please reference your Sword and Shield thoughts with this, like the dilemma between putting it as post game and putting it as DLC. Effectively, if Kalos is DLC, I feel like that becomes, well, we have to buy it. So if it's $25 now, this game is $85. Who is going to sit that out? Previously, Pokemon has given us, at times, great post game, at times lackluster post game. Do you see that becoming an issue here, that they kind of got their chops wet with the Sword and Shield DLC, and so they're going to say, hey, we're going to hard stop this game and make you buy DLC?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, like, and to me, it doesn't necessarily paint a negative picture for the game. I guess the way I feel about DLC is DLC has given Game Freak a chance to add to a game that they probably wouldn't have done so regardless in the past, right? So like
right.
X and Y, for instance, since we were talking about it so much, would have benefited, and people don't want to hear this, but would have benefited greatly from DLC. Like, as sad as it is, and I know, we all want to be like, it should be in the game in the first place. DLC is not needed. And that is kind of the way DLC has been now. Is like, it's not adding to a game that was already out. It's more like saving to keep a game alive longer. So I do understand the negative connotation of DLC, right? That has to be said. But what it also means is it gives games like Sword and Shield a chance to live, because Sword and Shield's base game, as fun as it was not up to par with the other games. The DLCs, however, bumped it to, I mean, a game that's like worth playing. Like if you were to buy the full package of Sword and Shield right now, including the DLC, you have a great game there. You really do. You have a lot of hours of content, and it's nothing compared to what we're going to be getting base game for Scarlet and Violet. But I think that's just, time did that. So the issue I have is like, we already could tell that they're going to do, or how they're viewing DLC with what we've seen with the leak with Suicune and Virizion. The fact that they are done, these things are in the game. They're programmed. They're definitely designed already. They're definitely figured out, everything like that. The choice to go, no, we're going to save this for DLC, to me does not bode well. To me, it means they know what they're doing. They know that they want to drag this out. So they're going to hold things back and kind of release them as they come. They're going to be cool things, I'm sure. I don't doubt that the DLC is going to be awesome. I just know that they're going to use the DLC to extend this game's life, and not for the way like you want it, for it being a live service. Because if it was a live service, I think people see that as predatory as well. But it's so different because the game does stay alive as long as we want it to be.
And I think that is how you completely sort of counteract that feeling of, oh, they're just holding it back, because the world is there. You're just adding little bits and pieces in. And sure, you could have done that, but the same sections are being reused for different quests or different ideas. So it doesn't feel like, oh, they just chunked off this area and didn't let us access it until we paid our $25. I think that is a more player-friendly way of going about it, but it also seems like it's just a step that Nintendo hasn't really taken yet. If you look at their DLC for all of their games, it was very like, hey, here's the Champion's Ballad for Breath of the Wild. Here's, the Isle of Armor for Sword and Shield. It's delivered in a much more traditional DLC way.
Yeah.
Saying it's done and they're saving it, well, that would be great. Save some Pokemon so that they, every couple of weeks they can really, that would be great. But it does seem like it's like, okay, how are we going to design a DLC? At this point, Nintendo does have more consideration, right? Because they have the expansion pack. And I do wonder if, this is something that could hit that. Yes, they could charge individually for it, but they did put one of their most a bigger seller than Pokemon, Animal Crossing New Horizons did get its DLC included in the expansion pack. They could have sold that easily, just completely separate.
Yeah.
So there is a chance that this could be a massive value add to that expansion pack if Nintendo and Game Freak decide, hey, we're more concerned with building our subscriber base than we are just straight coin. And then in that way, maybe it doesn't feel as expensive, but I guess it's just wild to think that, okay, this is going to be the biggest, most expansive Pokemon, and they're already saving or planning or charting a giant chunk. Do you think that with it being open world, the post game could be fruitful enough that you could exist without a DLC though? Like, is there an opportunity for them to deliver a different take on post game that they haven't really provided before? Not the whole separate region thing, but just hey, we're gonna reuse this world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've done a lot with post game that has always been really cool. Obviously, the best post game to ever exist is Gold and Silver, as well as Black, White, and Black 2, White and Black 2. But I guess it's like, in Sun and Moon, they had a pretty good one, especially Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. You had the Looker missions, which were basically just going around catching the Ultra Beasts, and that was kind of cool. You went to places in the map that you've already been, but now there were wormholes opening up, and there was a story. And then, of course, they did the Team Rainbow Rocket, which was really awesome. Instead of bringing you to old regions, they brought the old, evil villains to this region, and you had to basically fight all of them in a gauntlet-style battle. And it was like, that's awesome. That I think Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon probably had some of the best post-game in the recent Pokemon world. I think the reason why that game had a negative look was because they got rid of gym leaders, but and the region itself was basically 4 small islands rather than one expansive region. But that's Hawaii, so it's going to be like that. But there has been reasons to believe that like they can do a perfectly good post game in the world. Like they don't have to necessarily make us travel to new worlds or old regions. Like it just needs to be thought out. It just needs to.
Yeah.
The best post game, in my opinion, the best way to do a post game is introduce new Pokemon, right? So like Black and White did this thing where for the first run of the game, before you beat the champion, the Pokédex is very limited, like super, super limited. There's only like 100 and something Pokemon that you could even get. I think it's actually like 150 Pokemon. So they tried to match the original Pokédex. And then when you beat the Elite Four, you get the National Dex, which expands the Pokédex greatly. It's still not every Pokemon, but there is this now, like, once you beat the game, you're like, oh, let me go back to these old regions and see what new Pokemon are there. That was really cool because it gave a reason for you to do a run through the region again. Also, rebattling gym leaders, allowing them to have better teams than when you first fought them. That, to me, is great because you don't want to battle Brock a second time and he's still rocking a level 12 Onyx. You really want to have a challenge while also seeing some of your favorite gym leaders. That's already been confirmed that you can, well, not officially, but leaked, that you can battle gym leaders multiple times. So like that's cool. But yeah, I guess you give me rematches, give me new Pokemon being added to the region, as well as the major thing is let there be a post-game story. Something that like it has nothing to do with the story you just did, wraps up the original story, and then gives you a small adventure that stands on its own. I mean, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire did the Delta episode, and that was fantastic post-game. It was really awesome. At the end, you get Deoxys and Rayquaza, and you get an awesome little story that, stands on its own. So I guess that's, to me, like that's what a post-game should be, is it's a story expanded upon whatever was done in the original story, but also stands on its own while also allowing for more Pokemon, right? Like that's the bare minimum. The problem is they haven't been doing it. They haven't been really exercising their brain on how they can make a region interesting again. And the DLC is a lazy way, in my opinion, to get people to come back. But luckily, the DLC that they've done has at least been able to be good. Like, I do think the Isle of Armor was really fun. I mean, both of them were really fun. I just think, I don't know. For Scarlet and Violet, I do hope that they have a fully realized post game, regardless of if you go back to Kalos, right? That's really all I want, genuinely.
Yeah. I think it'd be a little generous of them, but it would be really nifty, especially given that this game has a marked difference of past and future if your post game flipped into the other side. So, if you're Pokemon Scarlet, you're really in the past, and then post game, you get to dip your toes into sort of a future storyline, and vice versa. Maybe that does chew into them saying like, haha, buy both versions. But I think that would be really, really nifty. And, I was thinking about how Legends Arceus did not do DLC. Now, I'm going to assume that's because of the development of Scarlet and Violet, but that game seemed perfectly ripe for both kinds of DLC. You could have had just a completely separate area. You separately load in. That's got to be, they're not connected, right? It's just, you just make this area. Or you could have done new outbreaks, new Pokemon, and yet they did neither. Now, I wish we would have had just another example of what they're doing, because if they did more regions, I would say, okay, well, this is kind of just how modern era Pokemon does DLC. Or if they would have done the inverse, we could have said, oh, well, they are open to just adding sort of random bits throughout. It's interesting that DLC is known so early, and I wonder if that is our best hint. Obviously, we have the clouds, but if DLC is known so early, that tells me, to me, it must be a separate region, because I don't know what would be a tell in playtesting the game of DLC if it was just, hey, we're randomly going to add new fun stuff to the world, we're going to make it live service. How do you foretell that? You really couldn't. So I think if we're going to kind of put our eggs in one basket, it is the pack-based separate area DLC, because how else would these leakers be so sure that it's happening?
Yeah, I think that's why I didn't shut this down immediately, like this idea of Kalos, because again, it does really just seem like one of those too good to be true type of deals. Everybody wants a Pokemon game where you go to every region and you do all the stuff, and like, so hearing even one other region being added is automatically, boost the game up. So something that I have been thinking about a lot is going back to, I think on one of the earlier episodes of the podcast, we spoke about that Ku rated the game already. Right. Amongst like his other ratings, and it was the third highest rated game that he gave. I think he gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Yes. The only two being better than it was Black 2 and White 2, and then Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which ironically or coincidentally, I guess, have the best post games, almost objectively, like the most things to do after the game. Right. And this was done after we had already known that there was post game, that apparently this post game is 3 times the size of the past couple of post games put together. Right. However, like, to me, it's like, if it's Kalos, regardless, even if it's not a fully realized Kalos, like, even if the design of it isn't as good as the 3DS games, I wouldn't rate it an 8.5. I haven't even played the game, and I'd imagine I would rate it higher just off of the whimsy I'd feel being able to go to a previous region, right? Like, right. 8.5 doesn't tell me 2 regions. 8.5 tells me great game, good post game, but maybe not, like, I don't know. So that's one thing that, like, has stuck with me, because again,
but is
2
he rating
regions
the
off
DLC?
The bat. That I don't know. If it's base game and it's an 8.5 and it's compared, that, like, that's it compared to Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black and White 2, that's insane. Like, that that excites me a lot more. If it's included with the DLC, it still is exciting, because to be anywhere near those games and be open world just tells me that they hit their mark. Whatever that is, they hit it.
I have to imagine it's without DLC, because I can't think that that's playable right now.
not only that, but I almost don't think that Ku has played the game. I don't know. Like, I don't know if that's a. I don't want to make an enemy.
Hot take. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But like the thing is it's very easy to leak information that you find out. It's a lot harder to be someone who play tested and leak information.
Yeah.
There's almost no way that that's happening and not being known by especially Nintendo. You know, like especially for someone as popular as Ku, because Ku is not like in the Pokemon kind of community right now is like a household name, and that's not something you often get for a leaker.
The new leaker was posting shots of what we assume is like a pre-release build.
Yeah, for sure, because everything was like kind of blocked out, so you couldn't tell the exact build. So to me, that's a playtester, right? But you can tell that Ku and whoever the playtesters are, while they're leaking similar information, there is a bit of, I guess, infighting or maybe a bit of like conflict. So I just leads me to believe that Ku is getting this information differently than say the playtesters.
I think that's probably right.
So like to rate it an 8.5, it could be just because he hasn't played it yet, and definitely not the DLC. Like, you're absolutely right on that. There's no way that's playable at all.
And you know, an alternative is back in the day, like there were expansions, right? So there, I guess, is the kind of just sort of third case scenario where Nintendo treats this as an expansion. Like, hey, we've really built out this open world style. We really like it. It's really worked out well. The next game is going to be Let's Go. We're not going to go back to this for a while. So why not put an expansion that maybe is $40, you know, but it does contain the Kalos. Like, maybe I'm getting too, you know, stars in my eyes and getting too excited, but that happened in the past with games. I mean, not really Nintendo games, but there have been $40 expansions that are not, you know, qualified as DLC, qualified as a full-on expansion. They could do that, and that would sort of keep this game and this idea and this new style going. Because after Legends and this back-to-back, I can't foresee Gen 10 anytime soon. I don't think that happens anytime soon. So that means we're due for Let's Go, maybe another remake, and probably spin-offs. So, you know, there is an opportunity that they could pour a ton into this one, and they could pour a ton of content and plan to get a ton of time and money out of it.
Yeah. You see, what's funny with this game in particular, and it's only affected for the Pokemon franchise, is we know how Nintendo is, right? I mean, you said it with like Animal Crossing, for instance. That, I think, is probably one of their biggest missteps is not supporting that game into eternity, because that game could have lived forever, genuinely. The thing is, though, is that Nintendo has always been a little bit shy when it comes to DLC. We're finally seeing them now. They're doing all these free updates. They're definitely doing DLC for their games. They are where the gaming industry was maybe 6 or 7 years ago, right? Like, they're finally at the point where they're like, let's not be afraid.
Always and forever. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So the one good thing about Game Freak is that Game Freak is not just part of Nintendo. Like, Game Freak is not, you know, first party publisher, really. They are their own,
right.
You know, the Pokemon Company exists on its own and can exist on its own. And so I think, like, that's why we've seen things like Pokemon Unite, Pokemon Go. Like, I mean, Pokemon Go especially basically catapulted mobile gaming to a whole new
level.
Size, like a whole new level. Yeah. So the one thing I will say about Game Freak is that, as much negatives as it comes with them, you know, with them constantly like feature creeping and constantly like just doing like the weirdest decisions, they are at least they try to test things out, right? They try to test battle passes, and they try to test all these other things. So I do think that they would be, if there's any part of Nintendo that would be more open to an expansion, it would be Game Freak right now. I think this is like the optimal time for them to be like, let's do it. Let's try it. I don't think we're at live service yet because when they discover that, it's over. When they discover a way to make it's one region, and as time goes on, maybe once a year they add another region, or 2 years they add another region. Like the day they realize that, we have the best Pokemon game ever. But
yeah,
unfortunately, we're not going to have that for a long time, because that's just not how game design is for them. And so I do think there is a reason to believe that maybe an expansion pack can happen. It doesn't have to be just DLC, segmented DLC. It could be like, in a year and a half, they're just like, here is a whole new part of the game. Stick with that for a while, because we're not going to be putting anything out.
Yeah.
Or mainline.
Except Pokemon Pinball 3, which I'm just going to keep willing into existence over and over again.
Yeah, I would take that over Kalos DLC.
Ooh.
Is that a lot to say? I kind of mean that. It's such
we will sacrifice Scarlet and Violet being the ultimate Pokemon game if we can get an ultimate spin.
The real
Thank
ultimate.
You heard it here first. All right, so that is the DLC discussion. It'll be very interesting to see what they decide to do. Obviously, we probably won't know about this until 2023. So we got some ways to go, but it does seem like, based on the leaks, based on the clouds, they're already sort of planting the seeds that this game will have life. And you don't go ahead and make an open world without planning for more than the launch day. You just don't. There's even Nintendo, you just don't. So this is, realistically a big deal for both Game Freak and Nintendo to, hey, we're getting into this multiplayer open world space that we haven't really tackled much before. And I think that they will capitalize. Now, whether it's great or whether it's good or average or meh, TBD, but Kalos, live service, maybe the middle area is just a stadium. Pokemon Stadium 3 in Scarlet and Violet, right in the center area. Because at this point, Pokemon Stadium is effectively the game. Right? Like, the conceit of Pokemon Stadium is like, it's 3D, they look better. No, well, we have that. It's in the game, so.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be down with that, to be quite honest. Just like an actual stadium that you go there, you can rent Pokemon like you used to be able to, or fight with your team.
Yeah.
Hey, hire us, please.
Yeah, please hire us. Check out Joseph's story over on Webtoon. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. And until next week, my friends, this has been, I think, episode 9. 9?
I think so, because I think last
9.
week
Yeah. 9 of Scarlet Fever. Don't get sick out there, but get excited for these games. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive. Thanks again. SwitchForce out. Ooh. All right. That felt very